I want to begin actually though by doing a land acknowledgement. So I do want to acknowledge that we are meeting on traditional Indigenous lands. As settlers, we're very grateful for the opportunity to be here and to use this land, and we're so thankful to everyone, all across generations, who has watched over this land and looked after it for us. In particular, we acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Attawandaron, and Wendat peoples. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. So we're going to hear a little bit first from our wonderful Executive Director, Christy Pagnello. She has been a lawyer with our clinic for about 18 years now. She's our acting Executive Director at the moment, and she's been leading us so fearlessly through these uncertain times, so I'm going to hand things over to her.
Thank you, Chelsea. And thank you, everyone. I want to extend a warm welcome from Neighbourhood Legal Services, and thank you so much for joining us today in what is a very important provincial day of action. At this moment across Ontario and throughout the day, community legal clinics like ours are hosting events to fight back against the cuts, because these are the deepest cuts to legal aid in the history of this province. We are here today to show the Ford government that community legal clinics and legal aid is essential to Ontario's justice system. And these things need to be maintained to ensure access to justice for all. Now, the need for this began on April the 11th. That was the day that the Ford government released its first provincial budget. What they also announced in that budget was a targeted hit on legal aid. They announced an immediate 35% reduction in year one to take effect immediately. $133 million immediately out of the system. And worse, what they announced was that these cuts will continue and they will reach 45% of the legal aid budget by the year 2021. This is a walloping hit, and it possibly represents the devastation of our system of legal aid in this province. The cuts for this year significantly have impacted all areas of legal aid, not just the clinics. Immigration and refugee clients can no longer obtain much needed representation at their hearings. They're left on their own to try to prove that they need to remain in Canada, as their lives are in extreme danger if they are sent back to their country of origin. Family law, criminal law, legal aid certificates are much more difficult to obtain. We know that our criminal and family courts are already incredibly backlogged, and the cuts will not only reduce people's access to justice in those areas, but will also increase costs across the system, which I'll speak further about in a moment. Then we have the clinics. Community legal clinics like ours, they exist across Ontario. And we are here today because that budget, announced in April, represents an attack on community clinics and the vulnerable Ontarians we represent. What this means for clinics in particular, what it has meant, is an immediate $15 million cut to clinics alone. 20 clinics in this province are dealing with budget cuts retroactively to April 2019 of 6 to 45%. We are told that the deepest cuts are coming next year, when legal aid has to find all those savings and more. At Neighbourhood Legal Services, we represent people individually. Many of our clients are on social assistance, and many of our clients are the working poor. We help them in a variety of areas: employment law, housing, income maintenance, and disability. But in addition to that individual casework, we have a very important mandate. and that is to advocate for systemic law reform for groups in our communities. However, due to this government's attack on legal aid, we've been faced with an immediate directive to stop prioritizing systemic advocacy. The obvious goal of that is to stop low-income communities from challenging the government's agenda, their legislation and their policies. It's a muzzling of low-income Ontarians and their ability to advocate for their interests. And it's an unprecedented attack on the principles of access to justice and, importantly, equality before the law, which underpins our democracy.